Brendan Keneally. Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to CPW for our illuminating talks on Thursday evenings, otherwise known as Meet the Artist. My name is Sarah Danziger. I am the Education Program Manager here at CPW, and I love it when I see new faces. So before I get started, I'll mention that these Meet the Artist is made possible by a generous grant from the Arnold and Augusta Newman Foundation. So we're very grateful for them to be able to support this. Also, if you haven't gotten a chance and you aren't already a member, I hope you would consider becoming one. There's a lot of wonderful things we have going on here and discounts to workshops, to our crit groups, to our open calls. So I hope that you'll consider that a good investment in the future of CPW here in Kingston. So another couple announcements. The restrooms are on the second floor. If you need to get there, you can take the elevator or the stairwell in the back. Otherwise, we have begun our summer workshop series last month, and we still have some coming up this month and next month. So I hope you'll get involved. And a couple that are coming up more soon than later. We have 2 Magnum photographers joining us this Sunday, July 13th, Sabiha Cheeman and Carolyn Drake. So did you say whoa? Yeah, whoa was right. This is an incredible experience to have your work looked at and feedback from 2 incredible photographers who are here, very special. Sabiha doesn't live up here, nor does Carolyn. So this is a unique opportunity. I hope you'll check it out. We also have Andrew Moore and Ryan Ruziecki, who's our in-house printer, will be teaching Art of the Big Print, and that's an opportunity to get to know the large format printers here, so you can print yourself here or go home and apply those skills to your big printer that may be sitting collecting dust at home. I speak from experience, so that's why I get to say that. And then also that weekend we'll have Annalie Clem doing toning for cyanotypes. So that will be really wonderful opportunity to get to know the cyanotype process, but also kind of take it a bit further if you want to explore other colors using local botanicals. One of the plants that she asked for was mugwort, and I was like, okay, I'll collect it before the workshop so you have enough. And then as I parked my car, I was looking at just an abundance of mugwort literally out in the parking lot. So that'll be fun to show off. Okay, so one other announcement that we just made is that we have a photo book and zine fair coming here to CPW on August 9th and 10th. We'll be joined by panels in the mornings, right where you are right now. Day 1 on Saturday, August 9th, we'll have Decolonizing the Photo Book, which will be moderated by Kiana Mestrich with her niece Davis, Keisha Scarville, and Kim Weston. So that'll be really, really great. And then another banger on Sunday. We'll have a 10 by 10 salon, the Photo Book and Resistance with Mariette Pathy Allen, Kiwi Hanley Byrne, D'Angelo Lovell Williams, and Ashima Yadava. And those are all artists that are featured in the Protest and Print Flashpoint reading room. So and they'll be moderated by 10 by 10. So I hope you'll join us. They're all free, 11 a.m. to 12:30 here. There'll be a huge book fair with over 30 exhibitors upstairs at the same time. So please join us. All right. Without further ado, I want to introduce Kathy High, our esteemed guest tonight, who is an interdisciplinary artist working with art, technology, and science. She collaborates with scientists and activists, considers living systems, animal sentience, queer ecologies, and the ethical dilemmas of biotechnology and medical industries. She has received awards including the Guggenheim Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, National Endowment for the Arts. Her artworks have been exhibited internationally at Documenta 13, Science Gallery Festival Transitio, Impact Festival, Parasite Gallery, and more. She is a professor in arts and has a laboratory at Center for Biotechnology and interdisciplinary studies at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in Troy, New York. She's the co-director of the Community Science Project Nature Lab, focused on urban ecologies and community-led health initiatives, which is part of the Troy-based activist organization, the Sanctuary for Independent Media. And one last thing I want to mention is that she will be hosting a feast event here at CPW, Let the Plants Carry Us. That's not this Saturday, but the following Saturday, and considers our environmental collapse and health. Artworks and excerpts of interviews with our feast participants will also be shared in this talk to introduce the event. In order to RSVP, you can email nadine@gunk.org and get signed up, and so you can hang out here and hear more. So without further ado, let's introduce Kathy. Welcome, Kathy.
Thank you, Sarah.
So this will start this. Presenter.
Hi, everybody.
There we go.
Hello. It's nice to see everybody here. And some people I know and some of you I don't. So thank you for coming, all of you. Can you hear me? That was a hint, a good hint. Thank you. Okay, so I am going to show you a bunch of different works. Some of the things I tried to pull out were a little bit more of the photographic works because we're in CPW. And also then once I get through those, I will talk about a little bit about the feast that's coming up too. So it'll give you a taste of it. And as Sarah said, if you're interested in that, please let either Nadine know or myself. If you're interested in coming, we can put you on the list. So we'll get to that. So in terms of my own background, I started doing photography and film and video a long time ago. I got my graduate degree from the University of Buffalo, but it was during this period of time, which if people are old enough to remember like me, that was a group of incredibly experimental film and video makers who were teaching there. It was the moment of the Buffalo Heads, which included people like Hollis Frampton, Tony Conrad, Paul Sharits, the Vasulkas, Stan and Woody Vasulka, and they were incredibly influential to me. So that was my media studies part of the degree, and then the other part of the degree was in photography in the arts department. So in the 80s, which is when this all happened, early 80s, I was making a lot of photographs. I was also part of SEPA Gallery, which was a photo gallery in Buffalo, still there, still functioning. I was a director there for a very short time, but a year, it's a year in their history. And also worked at Hall Walls and started their video program. So these are two galleries that were really seminal for my own production and my own future. The Hall Walls bit, people like Cindy Sherman and Robert Longo started Hall Walls in Buffalo. Again, an institution that's still going. And so they were part of the pictures generation. And so that influenced how I was making photographs. And a lot of times I would do things like these prints are from a series in 1984, which was taking images from New York City where I'd moved to, and then using kind of sandwiched analog process, putting a slide with the negatives to print them. I was working in photo labs, so I was able to print them quite large at the time. And that stopped at a certain point because I lost access to all of that and didn't have a place like CPW. So yay, CPW. I moved on then in the late 80s into the 90s to make a series of different videos, experimental documentaries. I was really interested in women as the position of women as patients dealing with the medical institution. And so I did a series of different pieces, one of which was I Need Your Full Cooperation. I interviewed Barbara Ehrenreich for this, the activist, who was really interested in talking about how midwives were chased out of their professions and replaced by the American Medical Association and doctors as a discipline as we know it today. So this had also kind of a fictional side to it and a documentary side. Charlotte Perkins Gilman's Yellow Wallpaper was the fictional side. And then I went on from there to develop a project called Underexposed Temple of the Fetus, which was about new reproductive technologies, and looking at it from the position of the patients and people who were doing the work of surrogate motherhood and things like that. So again, sometimes fact and fiction were mixing. Some people were interviewed who were scientists, and some people were, performing a script that had been written for them. And then finally, I moved from these pieces into a kind of strange area for the time. I was very interested in telepathic communication with animals, or animal psychics, if you will. And I started to follow someone whose name was Dawn Heyman, who has a sanctuary up near Utica. I was living in New York, and I would travel there often because I needed help with my very kind of bad but lovely cat, Ernie. And she was amazing. She was actually an amazing person. She did talk to all the animals, and I watched her workshops. It was kind of a study in anthropology because many people were following this. And it was not part of the animal studies kind of ilk that we have now. It was the beginning of that. My friends thought I was completely mad to be getting into this, but there you have it. At the same time, those films were going on in the 90s. I was also the founder and editor of a journal called Felix, a Journal of Media Arts and Communication. This was a journal that was aimed at video makers specifically, not experimental filmmakers. There was a great divide in those days, unlike now when things are kind of melded. And video makers didn't really have the same kind of level of procedure. There weren't that many venues for people to publish their works and to talk about what they were doing. So this was the last issue. It was done with artists from Mexico City in collaboration with us. And so we did, I raised funds to be able to work with Jimena Cuevas, Ricardo Nikolaevsky, and others, Jesse Lerner from Mexico City, and then people, as I said, from New York. One of the things that was really apparent to me, there's an amazing group of artists at that time in Mexico City making films and videos. And Jimena and I got into this very funny performative project, which was, she had been interviewed by this magazine, which is a bit like People magazine, TV Notice. It's on the checkout counter as you leave the supermarkets. Everybody buys it, everybody. And she was interviewed by them because she has a very famous father who's a sculptor, Jose Luis Cuevas. And they wanted to talk to her about being his daughter. And she said, I don't want to talk about that. I'll talk to you about the fact that I'm a lesbian or my video art. And they were like, okay. So here we are a week later in episode number 2 for Jimena. We made the front cover. This is the interview that was published. Jimena called me up and said, will you be my girlfriend for this? And I was like, yeah, sure. Okay, no problem. Love that. And so here we are kind of hamming it up. And a quote from Jimena is, basically we make love, we love each other, much like the rest of the world. So this was at a moment in Mexico City when, talking about somebody who was homosexual, who was gay, who was lesbian was absolutely out of the question. And people were really still very afraid to come out. Jimena's girlfriend at the time, real girlfriend, said, I can't do this, I'll lose my job. So it was quite an amazing moment for us to be able to enact this, because I had the freedom to leave the country, come back to the States, and Jimena didn't really care. So I went down again a couple times, and the next time, there they were, taking our pictures again. We made the cover again, and this time, actually, Jimena and I were fighting. I was saying, don't do this. I don't want to work with these guys and have the paparazzi because my girlfriend now will kill me because she's really jealous of you. And this is Jimena's father, Jose Luis Cuevas. Finally, we had to break up because it was just, too much. We did not make the cover, but we ended up here. Here's her father. It was actually at one of his openings when we broke up. And that was that. But the thing that this taught me was a lot of different ways of actually becoming much more of an activist through a lot of the work that I was doing. And two, to really engage in a kind of performativity that I had been flirting with before, but this kind of catapulted me into it. So I also, at the same time this was all happening, I had this very great superstition that I was going to die in the year 2000. I don't know where that came from. I have no idea. It was just a superstition I literally had since I was a child. And instead of kind of like freaking out about it, I decided I would perform my death once a month for the year. And this was really in a way to engage with talking about death also, because people now too, then too, don't want to talk about death, and people really don't want to bring it forward. So I decided this was just something I would try. And I'll show you an excerpt from a film I made around the same time as these other events in Mexico happening, and in 2000. So this was the February episode. Oh, God. My old Media 100 editing system. So one of the things that influenced me was, as I said before, Cindy Sherman's works. But the other thing was, this was one of the first videos I ever put online on the internet. It was a time when this wasn't really very common, and including putting bigger images up as well. So I wanted to play with this idea of slowing down time and thinking about time as we were getting into the internet. And it goes on. And the animals interceded in a way that was quite amazing. So I began to think about their autonomy in this, because they were really kind of making fun of me the whole time. I was trying to be really serious. They were like, yeah. I'm going to go to this other project where one other thing that happened is that I began to work in bioart, biological arts. And for those of you who aren't familiar with it, this is artists who are working with living systems. And there's some really amazing artists in the audience, like Adam Zaretsky, who are here, who I'm indebted to for helping me with this project. But I found that the work that these artists were doing was the most challenging, because they were really looking at ethics of what we're doing with advanced science. And I'm somebody who totally believes in science. This is not a critique of science, hard science, research science being practiced, but it was a way of beginning to look at what science is doing and asking how citizens can begin to interject our voices into that. So one of the first projects I did was this piece called Embracing Animal. And in this, I had an exhibition at Mass MoCA, and there was a kind of, big penthouse here for 3 transgenic rats. Transgenic rats mean that they had some human DNA inserted into their rat DNA. And I put them on display for people to look at. This was like a fake laboratory that I was setting up in the gallery. And the rats were also used for treatments on rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory diseases, and inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's disease, which I have. So I was interested in looking at kind of reverse engineering at the research animals that were developing pharmaceuticals for my treatments, because I didn't really understand how this could be happening. I was very naive about animal research, incredibly naive. And as I got into it, I realized we all owe them a huge amount of debt, and we don't know how many there are who are used. So Donna Haraway, an amazing thinker and theorist, has talked about this kind of animal. The onco mouse is another one that is bred for cancer tumors. She says that this mouse is her sibling or her sister. And she also talks about the fact that these are patented animals in some cases, and certainly they're manufactured. So these rats that I got were called HLAB27. That was the model number they were produced as, and they were produced to be similar so they could be used in experiments around the world. And I purchased them from a company in New York, and was able to put them on display at the museum. The thing that we had to think about very carefully was the politics of care. And this was at a point in 2004, 2005, and 2006, I mean, that they, this again was sort of in the air, but not quite in the same way it is today. We had a vet that came who did different kinds of treatments on them. We had put up all the different environments. We had different foods. The curator staff agreed to help with that, and they were all amazing, especially the night watchman, because I didn't change their circadian rhythm, so the rats played at night. And he ended up taking 2 of the rats home, and I took 1. And it was a huge education project. It was a project to try and really let people think about who are these critters and what are they doing for us. From this, I decided I wanted to continue with this, so I went to this residency in Australia, Symbiotica, and developed a couple other projects, one of which was Blood Wars. And Blood Wars, again, looked at the immune system, but this time from a different angle. I was really interested in kind of looking at how what language we use for our immune system. It's very military based, it's very aggressive. Our immune system fights off what comes in. I mean, while this is somewhat true, I think that there are some misnomers in this, and I want to think about that with this project. In this project, people were really happy to give me their blood. And so I was surprised by this, but happy. So I had many blood donors. It was shaped, so it was kind of a performance. It was shaped like the World Cup. There would be people who would play off, and then the winners would play each other. This could be upscaled, it could be downscaled, depending upon how it went. People were fiercely competitive with each other. And I was trained by the immunologist to do the separation of the blood so that I could extract the white blood cells from the red cells in the plasma, stain them both with fluorescence, red and a green fluorescence, and put them into a petri dish together, and then introduce them to a microscope that took time-lapse photography and over like 8 hours to 15 hours. And they showed us the so-called interactions between, or the battles, whatever you want to call it, between the people's cells. So there'd be 2 people's cells in the petri dish at the same time. The immunologist looked at this with me and told me some things that were really startling and really enlightening. Yes, there in some cases the cells one would be the aggressor and attack the other. In some cases, that was not the case. In some cases, the cells committed mutual suicide, like a Romeo and Juliet. So in some cases, they just kind of decided to separate and then eventually died because they ran out of food, basically. So there were all kinds of reactions, and I had not expected that. And what it did allow me to understand was the complexity of our immune system. So this was back in 2010 and 11. So I really began to question what we know, or what I know about this whole system. From there, I moved into the gut microbiome, which gets really, gets people going because I start talking about shit. So just a little warning here. And one of the things that was really hot in this field in about, 2010 to 2015 was fecal microbial transplants. Maybe some of you have heard it. Maybe some of you have done it. It's taking healthy stool from one patient and putting it into a sick patient to help repopulate their gut microbiome. What I did was I was asked by a dear friend of mine, who would you want a gut microbiome from? And I said, David Bowie. So with that, I decided I would make photos of myself enacting some of his more iconic image covers that I had loved as a kid. This had helped me, as he was somebody who was androgynous and, in my mind, queer. And so I was really delighted to be able to sort of do that. It was kind of amazing to see what his body could do, which I learned in the hard way, trying to enact these things. And then I took the photographs and I sent them to him with this letter. said, "Dear David Bowie, you know, I basically was asking him for a trade. I would give him these photographs if he would give me his stool for a fecal microbial transplant." Now, sadly, this was in 2015. David Bowie died in 2016. He was working, nobody knew he was sick, or a lot of people did, probably within his circle, but certainly I didn't. And what happened was, I don't know if he thought they were stupid or what, but he didn't reply. But I still think if I had been able to get a little bit of Bowie's poop in me, I could have been a little bit of Bowie. So, you know, I still hang on to this idea. Luckily, 2 years ago, I was on this amazing residency in Copenhagen with this Copenhagen Medical Museum called the Metabolic Arts Gathering. And this was looking at our metabolic systems with 7 other artists and 2 curators, Hannah Starr Rogers and Adam Binkard. The curators were really into this wonderful theorist, science technologies theorist, Hannah Landecker, who talks about how metabolisms are ubiquitous, but may be most noticeable in states of dysfunction. So I realized I have always been interested in states of dysfunction and uncharismatic animals and things like that. So one of the projects that I was able to work on with a scientist in California and then in Seattle, who I met through Victoria Vesna, thank you, Victoria, was Dr. Will DiPaolo. And he was working as an immunologist on gut microbiome. And I asked if I could be an artist in residence, and he agreed. So I spent a lot of time in LA in his lab and then in Seattle. This is Will and me doing one of the first experiments we'd ever done together in his lab. It was a super simple project that developed into a lot of other more complicated ones, but I just want to walk through it a little bit because something changed for me in terms of how I began to use photography through this. We took my stool sample and Will's stool sample. Will was the healthy one, I was the sick one. We then plated our stool samples onto Petri dishes with agar in them. And agar has different kinds of agar can express different kinds of bacteria. So we did a series of different kinds of agar and did our sort of swipes side by side. So this is actually 2 different kinds of agar. You see the divide in the middle, and Will's are on the top and mine are on the bottom. And you can see here that they're very different just in their morphology, just in the way they look. But there's also this, which is I don't have anything in this side, and Will has, you know, a fair amount of bacteria. We started to take note of that and ask, like, what is this? And it kept happening. So in different agar dishes, we would find there would be a profundity of bacteria from Will, and mine were empty. And the same happened over and over again. And this was a really interesting phenomenon because I also was thinking about forensic architecture at the time. I don't know if anybody's familiar with these theorists and artists who've been working out of UK primarily, but many other countries. They're very interested in looking at photography and photo stuff and using it almost as a kind of evidence of injustices that are done or ways that we can think about these dysfunctions. I have a situation in my gut which is called dysbiosis because I have been given a huge amount of antibiotics in my life since I have the Crohn's, and that actually kind of reduced the types of bacteria I have. And so this is a situation I'd been told before by doctors, and I also had gotten my gut, sampled by some of the gut places like gut biome and other places. And yes, I did have a profundity of certain things and not others. And so what I'm interested in here is this kind of visual record of something like that's happening in the body with microbes, which are incredibly hard to see. But to be able to register this for people who have this kind of a condition in a way that's very quick, very immediate, became a very powerful tool for me. So I was very happy that I was able to do this particular project with Will. I'm going to end my talk on my part of the talk on my work with this continuation of working with rats, which started in Symbiotica in 2009 and 10, and then continued until a year and a half ago. And this project worked with lab rats again. I found out that they have a kind of communication that is ultrasonic, so it's above our hearing range. They talk a lot in this other range that we don't hear. A lot of animals do. Subsonic, ultrasonic. Many animals do speak in these kinds of areas that we're not privy to because our hearing is limited. But with this, I was curious how they do this, what it's like, what are problems they might hear in the laboratory. But then I found that there's a really interesting phenomenon that they also giggled at a very particular register. So this is the scientist that introduced me to that.
As we have
phenomenon.
listened to animals playing, we have heard what appeared to be the sounds of laughter. And we studied these for a couple of years without quite understanding that this might be laughter. And then one day we decided to tickle some animals. And we realized that we had to look at the sounds at a very different register than we can hear. So we obtained these transducers that are called bat detectors that can bring very high frequencies down to our auditory range. And when we did this and we listened in, we could tickle animals and generate a lot of vocal activity that appeared to be laughter. These animals would begin to enjoy our company, and they would start to play with our hands, and wherever we would put our hands, they would follow it. And when we tested these animals to ask whether they were enjoying this kind of activity, the unambiguous answer was yes.
So this was really interesting to me because he went on, Panksepp unfortunately died in 2017, but he went on to talk about the fact that this is a kind of hedonic laughter. There's lots of kinds of laughter, but this means that we are in some way related to each other. We both laugh. I mean, a lot of other animals, they're finding out laugh as well. But at this time, I was fascinated with this phenomena, and I hoped that it would help people begin to think about our relationship with other animals. So this was what I was able to produce a year and a half ago. Finally, 13 years later, I was able to get into a laboratory at my university with rats that were donated to me to do this experiment, to feed them. Wait, I forgot to tell you, to feed them a chorus of rats laughing. We'd been lucky enough to get the samples from another colleague from Panksepp. We cleaned them up, we layered them. So it was like a laugh track, and you think about what happens when we're in an audience together and we start laughing together. It's a little bit contagious, totally anthropogenic. Maybe it would work with the rats, I thought. So this is what we're setting up. And what you see here on the screen is a microphone, an ultrasonic microphone to record their sounds if they respond.
And volume up. 4. Good.
So some of this is sped up just to get through to show you the whole experiment so we don't leave any out. So the results were quite good. We realized that they were not freaked out. We had an incredible team who worked with me. This is Matt Wellens and Michelle Temple, who helped with the audio as technicians, but they're also sound artists, and they were incredibly instrumental and collaborative on this process. Mike Jarvis was the behavioralist who was assigned to us to make sure and that we weren't going to upset the rats. He was really careful that we weren't doing anything wrong. And ultimately he left us alone because he said, they're fine. They're actually enjoying it. This is great. So I'm hoping to continue this project. I can't raise any money for it, so it's just, whatever. Here's the whole team that developed it. And I will say I'm really happy to know that this ultrasonic soundtrack and the downsampled one, which sounds like this, just sounds like birds. If I can get, oops, well, anyway, and is playing in 3 different animal exhibitions in Europe, in Belgium, in Istanbul, and in Athens. So there is a resurgence in this kind of animal studies stuff, which is great. And maybe some of this will be contagious to people too, in the sense of let's rethink how we use research animals. I'm just going to switch gears quickly and go to my more activist side, I guess, which is working with the Sanctuary for Independent Media, a nonprofit organization from Troy, New York, which is where I'm coming from today. This is an organization that a bunch of us kind of hag-tag, media, progressive media makers worked on and started 20 years ago. And this is our mission statement. We use art, science, and participatory action to promote social and environmental justice and freedom of creative expression. So this is the main space, the first building that we were working with. It's a church that we've converted into a presentation space, and we have a low power FM station there and other things. We're on the land of Mohicans. The Stockbridge Muncie community of the Mohicans is their official name today. They're very much alive and very much still working in this area. This is Troy right here at the confluence of the Mohawk and the Hudson. And where we are is where Henry Hudson had to turn around his boat, where the sanctuary is, because he hit the headlands there. And it's a really beautiful area, also honored by the Mohicans, because they had a leader, a sachem, who was called Umawat, who had his village right where the sanctuary was. So we felt really lucky when we found all of this out, that we had landed in a place that had already seen an incredible history, and we wanted to honor that kind of living history. And so we still are in touch with that council of that tribe today. And one of the projects for the sanctuary is that it's an anti-gentrification project. We landed on this block in a very underserviced area in North Troy, New York, and we saw that there were a lot of abandoned buildings and abandoned lots. And so we tried to rehab them and kind of bring some new life into them. So this is our community garden here, which were empty lots. This was a building here that was abandoned, would have been torn down by the city. We rehabbed that into a residency space. It was the original nature lab where Brenda Ann Keneally also had an artist exhibition there, which was quite amazing years ago, but it was beautiful. And here we are on one city block. We have a park, the sanctuary building, the gardens, nature lab, which I'll talk about in a second, and then a kind of reforestation project. Nature Lab is North Troy Art, Technology, and Urban Research and Ecology is what it stands for. It began as pop-up workshops in 2010, but in 2020, we were able to acquire this building on the left. And we have a community laboratory downstairs and People's Health Sanctuary on the upstairs. We focus on air, soil, and water for our research in the laboratory downstairs and bringing in the community. And the People's Health Sanctuary is a kind of mutual aid health space, which is quite beautiful. Here we are in the lab. This is the Water Justice Lab, our most robust program. We work in collaboration with Riverkeeper. And Riverkeeper asked us to work on this project 6 years ago. And they asked us to, when we were putting in this lab, to consider being their north node for testing the Hudson River from Troy to the source of the Hudson. These are paid interns and high school students who work with us in the summer, who've learned how to do this process from the scientists, Sebastian Pilatari, who's from Riverkeeper, who comes to work with us. They do collecting the water from the Hudson. They take it back to the lab. They process it. They add some enzymes that will begin to promote, and some fluorescence that will begin to promote the enzyme, the bacteria. We test for Enterococcus, which is a fecal indicator. Here, after 24 hours in the incubator, it can be examined. And the wells in these kind of encasements can be counted, which gives you a count as to whether the water is safe to swim in, safe to fish. And this is what Riverkeeper puts on their database. Here's a picture from 2 days ago with the group. They just had gone on a kayak trip. And this is Ellie Irons, who's the other co-director with me. So all of that Troy stuff is coming into this next feast. And this is the title of feast. It's called Let the Plants Carry Us. Let the Plants Carry Us reflects on plants as a mean to address climate chaos, improve health, and build resilience. We honor plants as more than human, an essential part of the ecosystem that sustains the planet, including soils, invertebrates, microbes, and more. So this event does feature the sanctuary's People's Health Sanctuary, a community-led mutual aid health initiative. And it also highlights artists who are working with art and science, new ways of hearing, and then seeing sometimes the sort of often dismissed worlds. Here's Ellie Irons. She's going to be one of the participants. And this is a photo of hers. She was working with kudzu. I call her Dr. Weed because she's really interested in, not this kind, but the kind that grow in the cracks. And she's very interested in getting us to reclaim, weeds and think about them differently. She says that her interest is bringing in plants and people together, in addition to bringing people into green spaces, and that's important for our mental and physical health. It's also a form of building solidarity between plants and humans. And if we can connect with plants and being cared there, and begin to care for their well-being as kind of synonymous with our own well-being, we can build safer and more sturdy oases that will see us through climate chaos. People's Health Sanctuary is an amazing group of people and work that they're doing. They're developing a community herbal apothecary. They're also have one of the lead people is doing community acupuncture, where you treat people in a group, not just individually. The theory of change is based in racial and transformative justice to create a liberatory model of community health care for all. Our goal is to establish a central space to share health skills and provide basic integrative care and explore ways to build networks of communal care. These are the speakers who will be working with us on Saturday, July 19th. We're going to start with a few workshops that are going to happen, and then we'll go into the actual short presentations by these artists and speakers, and then have the feast itself. This is in alphabetical order, not the order of their speaking, but Jude Abu-Zaneh is a Palestinian-Canadian artist who's a media artist who's also worked very much with art and science. She will be speaking. Xavier Coughlin is the lead on the People's Health Sanctuary. He's an emergency doctor who also is doing the community acupuncture demos. Ellie Irons is an eco-artist who works as an environmental artist as well. Tara Quackenbush is the herbalist who works with the apothecary there. And Lisa Schoenberg is a sound artist who is also an entomologist. She works with ants. She'll be doing a workshop for listening to ants. And Jenny Whiteman is a climate scientist and also had been working as a toxicologist. And she's an artist who will be looking at soil microbes and doing a workshop on that. So we have lots of different things happening. And then we'll have this amazing Palestinian food by Mizan Kitchen and kombucha by Yes Folk Tonics, and herbal teas from the herbal apothecary. So in the current era of extinction, we urgently need to refine our cyborg politics, says Donna Haraway, taking pleasure in confusion of boundaries and making arguments for responsibility in their construction, in maintaining refuges and spaces for wild and unruly forms of life. We need to make sure that homes for inverts and queer microbes are included here too. Thank you. Thank you all for your attention. I really appreciate it. I just threw a lot of stuff at you in terms of works, different kinds of works. But I'm happy to take any questions if you want to ask anything. Adam, yeah, and then Ellen. Or do you want to go first? You guys fight it out. Oh, that's not Adam, sorry. There you are, can't see you back there. Okay, cool. Hi, Jeremy.
I can't next is this issue of requirements, so anything else you can tell about the making of that terminology.
Felix, oh, thank you. So landscapes, so you know that issue of it. Great.
I thought that didn't work with and carried it over to continents.
Oh, my little heart is going pitter patter, thank you. So, okay, so that was a project that, I took on kind of crazily, sometimes using funds from some grants that I should have been working on other things and, like how it goes, right? And it was really great because what we did was we worked with artists to give them both artist pages so they could do their own thing, but also if they wanted to just write an essay, we would design it for them. And I worked with 2 different designers through the whole time. That one half was Diane Bertolo and the second half was Diane, Bonder, sorry, who both of them were amazing and they were really great in terms of helping to shape the look of it, which was quite beautiful. It was a stunning magazine. And they were in print. They weren't online. I'm still hoping to get them online. I have all the issues. And I worked through the the Standby program, which was an organization I had worked with for years in New York City. This was a very odd project where Rick Feist had started it, and he's an art editor, and he was like a high-end editor at the time. He got us into these studios so we could do high-end broadcast level editing at night for 10% of the cost. So I helped him run that, learned how to become a CMX editor myself along with some other people. And then from that, wanted to do something more theoretical and kind of curatorial, I guess. So that's how I ended up starting the journal, because I wanted that to be side by side this other thing. And yeah, it lasted 12 years and we did 6 issues. It was a very slow process, but it was really beautiful to work with different curators for each one. I was the consistent one. So thanks for that. And I would love to talk to you later about it. Yeah. And Ellen.
Yes, well, I saw Becoming Animal, which I was really thrilled about.
Embracing Animal. Becoming Animal was the exhibition. Oh, you saw the exhibition?
The exhibition.
Oh, yes, that was the name.
With the
Yep.
gas logo, right?
Yeah.
And I wondered what the reception publicly was for them, because a lot of people don't follow Donna Haraway and
Yes. Totally.
other theorists in this. Could you get a sense of what the public reception was?
It's always hard to tell those things, but I think that it was really quite amazing because people, the thing that was sort of problematic for me after the fact was, okay, the animals were on display, so they're a little bit like in a zoo. So that was not, I don't think I would repeat this at this time in my life. But what it did do was it introduced the public to a lot of the sort of practices that were being done with these rats. The fact that they were transgenic, the fact that they were being developed for research. Adam was amazing. Adam Zaretsky helped me do the website for it, which is really quite beautiful if you look at it. Some of it doesn't work anymore, but it's because it's quite old, but it's embracinganimal.com. And so it was a way of looking more intimately at these rats and how they eat and how they sleep and how they play together. I was taking a risk. The rats were, I didn't know if they would really make it. I was like, please don't die on me. This will be really bad for you and for me and everybody. And they didn't. They actually thrived. So I went on a hunch and it kind of paid off in a great way. The scientists who went through the exhibition were really, because I trained the docents to talk about it. I think Adam helped with that too. And so they were people who went through it, the scientists particularly were like, this is great. This is great. It's a great way for people to begin to understand what this is, this transgenic, because people didn't really understand transgenics.
It was wonderful, I thought, that
Thank you.
worked with Jack Hansen, who's one of the authorities on emotion, and that he was so excited to work with you as an artist.
Well, he actually didn't. I wrote him many times while he was alive and he never responded, but his colleague, Jeff Bergdorf, who was his student, who became his collaborator, when I approached him after Pansep died, because I thought, well, I could try it, he responded immediately and was completely into the project. So I don't know if Pansep was ill or what happened, because I probably hit him towards the end of his life, which I didn't know. I don't know, because he just didn't respond. But he was incredibly influential in my thinking about the Rat Laughter Project. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Adam.
I want to ask that question because you're so prolific and multi-dimensional, but also, I just want to know what you're up to now, or what are you doing? Well, because, it's great to see everything you've been doing, so I'm like, what's that? You're here, I want to know.
Oh, thank you, Adam. Well, I just finished a science fiction film that is a short, that I'm actually still working on a little bit, but it was shown in one gallery. I'm going to try and do another round on it. That was about how our gut microbiome might change really, 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 really radically and give us new powers, I guess. So it's called Becoming Vulture, so there's a hint. And then I also have been working in tandem with this project with a scientist in Copenhagen who has a synthetic gut. So you can actually feed it stuff like it is as if it were a gut. It's isolated. It's called the SHIME, the Simulated Human Intestinal Microbial System, or something like that, ecosystem, sorry. And Dr. Manny Arumugam and his team have been amazing because I went to them when I was in Copenhagen and I said, everybody's working on kind of wellness issues and making everything really, trying to get the gut to be as healthy as possible, et cetera, et cetera. I'm like, but people aren't really eating that way. They're not really doing it or behaving that way necessarily, or can't afford it. What happens then? And he was like, I said, can we do a project testing that? Like, how far can we tank the gut system? And he was like, yeah. That's cool. I haven't done that. So he got his team to agree to it. And it was the first time in their lab, anyway, I don't know other labs, they were able to feed foods to the gut microbiomes, which were my own. I took samples for myself. It was easier to get the approval. And so we're waiting for the results. And it's kind of amazing because I went and interviewed the team and they were really into it and hoping that the results might allow them to continue working on it. Because this version, they said, was just an art project. It's not a science project. So they might do the science project if it works out. And I will be making some works out of that project also as well. So that's sort of where I am right now. Yeah. But yeah, thanks. So I hope people want to come to Feast. Yeah, come on. Thanks to Ellen Levy and Victoria Vesna who put this together. Abigail Simon is here, who had the one that was previous to ours. And thanks to CPW for hosting us. It's really amazing to be working with you all and to be here. So we really appreciate all that you've done too. Yeah, oh, one more question, yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the Facial Lab was anything around the common landfill, which is just Norfolk Road. Are you monitoring it or?
We had been working with other activists who were doing it and kind of enabling them to do it. We haven't been doing research with that ourselves at this point, but we're hoping to get involved. What we sort of used as a model was we have scientists who come to us from either local universities or something, and kind of collaborate on projects with them to develop it with the community and such. So we haven't had anybody looking at that specifically, but yeah, there has been a lot of activist work around it, not necessarily research on that space. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, I think it's really difficult because there's so many with these cities in northern part of New York State, these kind of post-industrial cities. There's so many legacies that we have from the industries that were there. Kingston does as well. So I think that's something that, every place should be looking at. And I'm just really grateful that we have a community laboratory, that we will be able to look at that with the community itself. It's very different than having a laboratory at a university. I'll say that, because it's much more kind of hands-on for people. And I'll say that the students who were doing the lab pictures that I showed you, the high school students, they just had their first college course today, their first day in college, with a scientist there learning macrobiology and molecular biology, STEM skills. And this was our first afternoon at our community college to do that. So it's really growing, and we're really proud that this work might influence some people from this community to become scientists and do the research themselves. So, yeah, is that a question or just a, no? Okay, I kept you long enough, unless there's something else. Thank you so much. So nice to have you here.